Hello, everyone. A biology teacher here. I recently had the opportunity to sit down and talk with Dr. Dana Green, who is a wildlife biologist and ecologist who studies bats in Canada. Now, this video is going to be part of my Pathways series, where I talk to scientists about their journey into the science field. My goal with these videos is to show students that the pathway into a STEM field is not a linear sequence of events that only has one pathway. There's a lot of different ways to get into science and into a STEM field. So my goal here is to highlight these journeys and highlight these pathways to help students better navigate their journeys into a STEM field. Thank you again, Dr. Green, for taking the time out of your day to speak with me, and I hope that we get to have a second one of these because I still have a lot of questions that I'd like to ask and learn about the science that you are doing at in Canada. So with that being said, let's just jump right into it. And just again, thank you so much for meeting me today and having this conversation. Again, this series that I'm trying to produce is called Pathways, where I try to highlight different pathways into science that I and others and students may have not seen before. My whole goal is just to show students that there isn't just one way to get into science, and that different scientists have all these really cool stories they can tell about how they got into science. So I always try to talk to people that may just have a different story than I did, because I went to college and I had my kind of general bland story. I like to hear from other people. So with that being said, I have Dana Green here. That's something else I didn't ask. Dana, right? Is that a pronounced name? Dana?
Yes, Dana.
Perfect. One for one right now. But Dana, I'm gonna shut up myself. I'm just gonna let you explain kind of a little bit about your background and just what you do as a scientist, and just like your general what's a day in the life of your work look like.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you. So, I also thank you for having me on. I like to share my story, especially because it's kind of an unconventional one, and I think can connect with people at different levels and different stages of their lives. I am Dana Green. I have my PhD in biology, and specifically, I am a wildlife biologist. So, if I were to describe my work in my field in a single sentence, I am a wildlife biologist with a specialty in bat conservation and ecology. So, I study bats and other small mammals.
Hmm. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
originally from St. Louis, Missouri, and now I'm living in rural Saskatchewan, Canada.
How did you like that trip over? This is something that I didn't see. But how long have you been? Maybe I do have it in notes, but how long have you been living in Canada?
I've been living in Canada since 2018. This is where I came to do my PhD work.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And yeah, yeah. So I did my PhD here, and I moved here specifically for that to work with who my supervisor and mentor was. And I studied migratory bats here, but before that, I was in Arizona, and before that, I was in Missouri. So I've kind of
Mm.
been all over the place.
Do you enjoy living in Canada?
I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Yes. I did move back. I finished my PhD last year, and well, I guess over a year ago now, because I was back in the States for a postdoctoral position at the University of Illinois, and I did that from 2024 to 2025, and moved back home. This I do own my house in Canada, so I knew it was going to be a short term thing. Uh, yeah, and I moved back in the summer and starting another postdoc in British Columbia.
Oh, congratulations! Congratulations about buying a home. That's a tough thing to do in today's
It
world.
is. It is. I am very fortunate to have been able to have afforded a home at the time. Like, I don't think I could do it again. It was definitely a moment in time type of deal. Because I've done a bunch of work. I'm an academic. I'm a researcher. I just finished up my PhD, and now I'm a full-time researcher at the moment. But I've also worked in consulting. I've done a lot of nonprofit work, so I've been a lot of places and I've done a lot of things in the field.
That is awesome. So one of the things I like to highlight during these series or these sessions is how did you get into science, and like, in high school, in middle school, did you see this as a possible career? What did you talked about you went to Arizona, but just kind of give a little background of like how did your educational pathway, your educational journey go?
Yeah, this is actually one of the reasons why I like to kind of talk about like my pathway here is because to put it quite frankly, I'm very happy that I passed high school. I was I was not a very good student. Or at least I wasn't being, maybe I should rephrase that. I can be a good student. Obviously, I am a good student. Wouldn't have gotten this far if I wasn't. I just, in high school, wasn't challenged in the ways that I needed to be.
Hmm.
And that resulted in delinquency. So,
Can you
um,
define that?
oh, I just got into all sorts of trouble.
That's
School could not keep my attention. I think my
Mhm.
sophomore year, I skipped more class than I attended.
Wow.
Uh, like I really was not a great student. But I think what really helped turn a large part of my story around was I actually had an incredible homeroom teacher that paid attention to his kids.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, Jim Hubbard. I'm never going to forget that man because he pretty much noticed what was going on and started. Honestly, I hated it at the time, but he was just looking out for me. Started to give me a hard time and got me in with the school counselors and stuff. And I think that made a really big difference. Like having one teacher to get your back changes everything. And that's really throughout my entire academic career from high school going all the way through university, I've always had a teacher who had my back and nothing replaces that. So um, it still didn't necessarily help my GPA getting out of high school, but I did
Mhm.
graduate. I did graduate, which is awesome. So
I was a teacher for 12 years, and I always told the kids, you might not vibe with every teacher, but if you just get one teacher to have your back, like that's all it takes is just one
it's
person
all it
just to
takes.
be that support. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and my mom is a teacher too, so of course, like once the people at my high school started paying attention, then she was brought into it as well. And I love my mom. I love my mom
Mm.
so much. So it also helps if you have an incredible parent.
Hmm. What did college
Uh,
look like, and how did that proceed going from you kind of revitalizing your educational aspirations? What did that process look like?
yeah. So after I sincerely did not have the grades to get into a 4 year university. And so I went to community college. So I went to St. Louis Community College, Merrimack campus. There's a few STLCC systems around the St. Louis area, and I was at Merrimack.
Hmm.
And I was just doing general education stuff. I thought I was going to go to a liberal arts college and major in art and literature and maybe be a teacher down the line. So teaching and education has always been kind of in the mix. Um, and I had to do a general ed introductory biology for non majors. And it was that class that I'm never going to forget her either. Like, there's definitely people in my life who it's like, you might actually, I would say they may not know how much of an impact they have had, but I have always made it a point to like figure out what their current emails are and be like, it's because of you.
That's so
So
key.
I do that. I do that. And so her name is Cheryl Weibel, and she was an incredible introductory biology teacher and would talk all the time about the conservation work that she did with, I think it was leatherback sea turtles.
Oh.
And that was like, what is this? Like, what is this awesome? Like, you get to go and study turtles? Excuse me? Um, I had never seen anything like that before, and it just kind of triggered something in me. And I've always been like an animal lover and a wildlife lover, but I always thought that the only thing you could do is be a veterinarian. I didn't know that there was entire fields of research and of science. There's all sorts of different fields.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so her intro class kind of inspired me, and I started looking for different volunteer opportunities. And there was a good stint there where I was a volunteer and then intern director at a
Ooh.
big cat sanctuary. And it was through working at that big cat sanctuary that was located in southern Missouri. Um, they moved locations from like southeast Missouri to southwest Missouri, and I moved with them. And
Mm.
that is where Missouri State University is located. And that's where I enrolled. At that point, I was finishing up my general education. My high school, high school grades were wiped clean because I was gone through community college, and so it kind of is a new slate. I did much better, um, and that's where I started my undergrad. So I applied to get in, got into my undergrad program, which was wildlife biology,
Mm.
and yeah, I worked at the Big Cat Sanctuary for about a year going into my undergrad, and then I decided that I wanted to be more active with the research side of things and kind of be more of a boots on the ground type of person. And Missouri State was an incredible institution to do my undergrad. It's a smaller university, much more focused on undergrad education, which meant that there were some really awesome undergrad research opportunities. And one of those was a bat ecology lab. And and that started down this path. And here we are now.
I love when I talk to scientists and when I talk to non-scientists, and a lot of people think that like scientists, and there are scientists who are just like, straight A students, 4.0, that they knew their path in life, and then when you actually talk to other scientists, like, oh wait, no, 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 some of them definitely struggled in college and in high school, and they have a
Mhm.
path that's not as linear as that people think. So it's really awesome to hear. And the other awesome thing I'm hearing, again, because I tell my students all the time to look into, or I did, to look into community college. And I think there's this just, well, I have to go to this university to get this degree. And I'm like, well, you can make it there eventually, but you'll probably also save tens of thousands of dollars
Yeah,
if you go to this community college. And there's a big,
yeah,
there's like, I don't know how to say it, but like there's um, like a stigma against community college. And I wish I would have went to community college just to save again that money. So hearing everything that you're saying is just like, yes, this is exactly what I want kids to hear, or students to hear.
yeah. I am a very big proponent of community college. I think it's a great way because the first year of universities, the first 2 years, you're doing general education. It's
Hmm.
general education. You can do that at community college for so much cheaper. And so I think, like, do I still have student debt? Of course I do. You can't really make it out anymore without
Who
student
does
debt.
it?
I know, right? Like it'll be with me for a while. But I take that back. I might not be with it for a while because I was able to save so much. Um, I'm probably still like years away, but it's probably within the next 5 to 10 years that I'll have my student loans paid off, which is
Oh
really not
wow.
bad.
Right. No,
I really
it's
think so.
yeah. Oh no, it's that's yeah, congrats. That's great.
Yeah, probably closer to the 5 year mark too. So
Oh
I'm
wow.
excited.
Yeah, that's awesome. How did what did so after you had your kind of intro to I'll say wildlife biology, how did looking into applying for grad school look? What were some of the aspects or the I would say difficulties, but things that you had to learn with that kind of process?
Yeah, so okay, so now when I was applying for grad school, this is circa 2013, 2014, because I started in grad school in 2015. So probably like mostly 2014 time. So we're talking 10 years ago. And it has changed for the better. I mean, given how things are, at least in the US right now, that's a little bit more iffy with how grad programs are going to be accessible. Um, because of funding. That all trickles down to funding in the sciences, which is a different conversation.
That's totally
Different
understand.
conversation. Um, but some of the things that I needed to do, and this is one of the big things that changed, is that I did have to do the oh my gosh, it's a standardized test. Like it's so like it was so long ago now that I didn't that I can't even, the
GEDs? No, not GED.
no, not GEDs. Oh my god.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of the name. I
I've been talking about GST, which is a tax here in Canada, and that's not what it is either, obviously. Um, what is? I have to look this up now. It's a
GRE.
graduate GRE. Oh my God, GRE. Yes. So the GRE was a requirement for the vast majority of universities that I was applying to, and now when I was an undergrad, whenever I started at Missouri State and I was on the at the university, I was also not really into the university life. So if that's someone's shtick, like if that's what you're into, then you're just not going to relate to what I'm about to say, which is my idea of a fun weekend rather than tailgating for the football game was going out at night and catching salamanders and frogs and toads and bats. Like that's what I did for the vast majority of my free time in
Th-
my undergrad.
that sounds like a good time to
Um,
me.
it was a blast. It was an absolute blast. I milked every opportunity that I could out of my undergraduate when it came to the different experiences I could get. I went out on the extra credit field trips to go flip over rocks and find snakes. I took the extra credit field trip to go catch mammals over the weekend. Like that was my bread and butter, and it was essential for it laid the foundation for everything else that happened because I had experience. What I got out of that was experience. Experience trapping, experience netting, experience with study design, all sorts of different things. Um, so I really got some awesome opportunities during my undergrad as well. But you sometimes you have to reach out and look for it, and apply yourself. Like you've got to want to do that because if you're helping, what it turned into for me during my undergrad was I was helping graduate students, and so then they start to rely on you. They start to rely on you to help them with their research, and so if you're not going to be reliable, then it won't work out. So,
Yep.
uh, time and dedication. Um, and I feel like I lost the path to the original question.
Going to grad school, what did that look like?
Right. I'm so sorry.
It's
Sorry.
okay. This is
So
great.
I I had to back up for that because I had experience. It made me a lot more competitive for graduate programs. Um, because like if you're applying, I wanted to go into work with small mammals, and so if I'm applying to other research programs that are field based, I already have field experience on my resume. I even had like some status reports that we did for companies that we were contracted through as undergrads, which was crazy. Um, Radio telemetry, I got some of that experience as an undergrad.
Mm.
Yeah. So applying to grad schools, I had a pretty competitive resume coming out of my undergrad, and after getting the gen eds out of the way, I also really liked my coursework. And it's believe it or not, when you enjoy coursework, you actually tend to excel in it.
Mm.
Uh, it's amazing when something's fun and interesting, you do better at it.
Hmm.
So I actually I went from barely passing high school to graduating from undergrad magna cum laude, which
Oh, wow.
was incredible.
Oh, that's awesome.
Didn't Yeah. So again, high school doesn't necessarily define what you do with your future. Um, Thankfully, the GRE, going back to the GRE, thankfully, fewer and fewer universities are now requiring the GRE. For very good reasons. I really hope that if any potential graduate students are listening to this right now, I hope you don't have to take the GRE, because it's expensive and is not a good metric for one's ability. The
Yeah.
expensive part is very prohibitive to. I mean, frankly, I think it's an innately discriminatory thing to require. for graduate programs because not everyone, I think when I did it, it was $180 to take the exam. And that was, I asked for it for a Christmas present from my parents because like I couldn't afford it. So imagine like I'm privileged enough that I had family that could help me through that. And my family has helped me through almost every part of this as well.
Hmm.
So I'm a very privileged, very fortunate person to have been able to get this far. Um, yeah, so hopefully the GRE is will soon be completely phased out.
Hmm.
But also, I stand by again that it's not a reflective of one's ability. I think that there are papers out that actually say that.
Hmm.
And personally, I scored 1 point above the bare minimum on my GRE. I got 1 point above what I needed to just qualify for grad school.
Hmm.
And what GREs also do is teaching assistantships, and oftentimes teaching assistantships will come with tuition waivers for graduate students. There's only so many that can
Hmm.
be doled out for a department. And if your GRE score isn't that good, then you could get passed over for that type of funding assistance.
Mm.
So, again, prohibitive and innately discriminatory.
Yes. Yes. Totally. I'll just say from the people I've talked to in grad schools, I've heard this very commonly. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll go on.
Yeah, sorry. There's lots of things that like have stuck out to me through this whole process, and I'm like, this is so wrong and it needs to change. And like the requiring things like the GRE is one of them.
Hmm.
Uh yeah, but I cold contacted probably hundreds of researchers. That's a huge part of programs in like the wildlife sciences and getting into a wildlife program is that you got to contact a lot of people. And a big thing that I think people need to accept, and I accepted this as well. In fact, I kind of sought it out after um, going through my undergrad is not being married to the taxa specifically that you're studying.
Hmm.
So like for example, like people want to work with big cats and want to work with wolves and that's all they're looking at and that's all they're seeking is just things where they get to work with wolves or work with bears, the big charismatic megafauna. Something that was always told to me and something that I'm going to continue to spread is it's not so much about the taxa you're working with, but the questions you're asking. What is your question? What do you want to know? Because you can figure out things, you can answer those types of questions, but maybe you'll do it with a shrew rather than doing it with a bear. And once you kind of get an understanding of how those systems work, you can then use those skills to apply to the things that you want to study, like bears further down the line.
That's a heavy line. I like that. I'm big into paleo, and I went into paleo thinking I would only be interested in dinosaurs. And now, if I never see another dinosaur bone in my life, I'd be okay with it. Like, because I like mammals more now. I'm like, I'd rather see a mammal fossil than any dinosaur fossil. So I totally hear what you're saying.
Getting into grad programs, emailing a lot of people, thinking about the questions rather than the taxa. And so whenever I was getting out of my undergrad, and remember, I actually started like before I even got into research, I was already working with big cats. So it's like that's where
Hmm.
I started.
Hmm.
And I've gone down in scale, and actually it's really like bats is where my heart really is. I'm at the point in my career where I like can kind of specialize like that.
Hmm.
But whenever I was applying for master's programs, I was like, mammals. I want to study mammals. So I was applying to labs that were studying bats, of course, because I had experience, but also small mammals, rabbits or lagomorphs, and even birds, like all sorts of different programs that were all mostly centered around animal behavior. I've always wanted to study animal behavior and just try to understand why animals act in specific ways. And for me, that was also heavily related to habitat selection. So I liked being able to be in the field and understand how ecosystems influenced the animals and how those animals would behave in response to those environments,
Hmm.
and with each other. And through emailing probably hundreds of professors, I ended up getting into Northern Arizona University. Um, and in that program, I did end up, I always kind of made the joke that anything that could go wrong in a graduate program went wrong. And I do stand by that. So many things went wrong with my program, including halfway through my master's program. I ended up quitting my lab because it was not a good environment for me, and switched labs, switched advisors, totally switched projects. So I went from the first year and a half studying jackrabbit habitat selection and how golden eagle reproductive success related to that. Switched from doing that, studying jackrabbits and golden eagles, to studying vocal communication in a predatory mouse.
Oh, predatory
Yeah.
mice. Jeez, that's a big flip.
Yes. It was a big flip, and it was the best big flip that I think I could have ever made. I ended up loving my master's program. Yeah, so those are called grasshopper mice, which if you have never heard of a grasshopper mouse before, they are one of the coolest mouse species out there, and they are found in the desert Southwest.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Oh, that's so cool. Um, so just I love when, you know, I'll talk to a again. I actually am not a teacher anymore. I don't know if I mentioned this to you. I just quit teaching this past year.
Yes,
I need to get out.
I
Um,
follow you. I follow you.
that's
I
okay.
see your posts.
Thank you. I always just like I don't know how far my reach gets, but I I've always told students like they're like, well, I don't know if I want to do this or not. I'm like, go for it. Like, who cares? Like, who cares if you fail at it or you change, majors and you change universities? So what I'm hearing is like, I just love hearing like when students, they think that things, I don't want to say failures, but they're like, well, this is what I planned. Who cares? That's part of the whole process. And I just love hearing
Yeah.
that you're like, yeah, I need to change and this is the best thing that ever happened to me. And that's just great.
Yeah, and that has been like, if there's one thing that has always remained the same, is that everything has always changed for me. Including, like, we haven't talked about like the whole like eye patch situation yet. So if you're just listening and you don't see, I do wear an eye patch. It is a medical device, but that happened in 2019. So it's
Mm.
not like this has been sporting around the entire time either. So lots of change has happened for me.
Was that in the middle of your? No, wait. You said you 2018. You was that in the middle of your education at all?
It was, yes.
Oh my.
Um, yeah, so like I said, I finished up my master's at NAU, Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff.
Mhm.
Um, Also had incredible mentors and teachers who had my back during that whole time as well. And that's after, the same process as like I'm sorry, I'm like getting like lost in my own words and story. Uh, the eye patch and my all of my eye issues started 1 month before my first field season for my PhD work.
Ugh.
So talk about bad timing,
Yeah.
real bad timing. Yeah, so that's when that happened, and then I had to pivot pretty hard, and then the next year was pandemic year. That was 2020, summer of 2020. And if
Hmm.
you want to talk about something that was difficult to study in the summer of 2020, it was bats.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's been a hard time being a bat biologist.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you where did you go? You said you graduated in 2018. You said from is it NAU or NIU?
NAU, Northern Arizona
NAU.
University.
Where did you go for your PhD? That was
For
in
my
Saskatchewan.
PhD, it's in Saskatchewan, and this is the correct pronunciation. I went to the University of Regina in Regina, Saskatchewan.
Hmm. Did, what was that process of? Because I know something that's actually I don't think.
You actually might be at that university. I'll have to double check. I know one of the
There
paleo people.
there is such an incredible paleontology program here. I had no idea. If you wanted to live out Jurassic Park dreams, it's in southern Saskatchewan. Like we're talking the amber inclusion, like the insect inclusions in amber. There we go. And like they're
Mhm.
doing these crazy scans of this amber with these insect inclusions now. Oh my God, it's so cool.
That is amazing. I is it near?
Yeah.
I'll be totally transparent. I don't know my Canadian geography like I should.
Don't worry about
Is
it.
it
Yeah, that's
is it in the
fine.
same is it in the same province as Calgary?
No, Calgary is next door to the west in
That's
Alberta.
right. Okay. Okay. What did look
Yeah,
what did it look like going from a United States program to a Canadian program?
yeah, so that definitely did. That was a pretty big learning curve, pun intended. Um, yeah, yeah. So for one thing, um, finding a PhD program was a little bit different than finding a master's program. You did still have to find an advisor. Like step one in all of this is that you have to find an advisor or supervisor to do research with because like you're learning to be a scientist, and so like you have to find someone who's willing to take you on as a student first, and then you apply to the university. Um, yeah, so I met my PhD supervisor. I never met them in person. I met them online first, except I was co-supervised. So I had two PhD supervisors. And my first one, Dr. Mark Brigham, he was located at the University of Regina. Well established, career spanning like 3 decades, incredible researcher, very, very well known in our field. And then there's Dr. Erin Bearwald, who actually was one of my very good friends. And I met her at conferences. And so, one of the experiences that you have when going through grad programs is going to scientific meetings and scientific conferences, where it's like, imagine an anime convention, but rather than everyone knowing everything about every subplot of Naruto, you're gonna have people that probably know the DNA sequence of some obscure bat, and you're just gonna geek out about it all week long. Um, and those types of meetings, you get to connect with people in the field, and so you get to potentially meet other potential advisors that you're going to have down the line, and that's how I met Dr. Erin Bearwald. And so she and Mark Brigham were my two PhD supervisors. And I had a couple of interviews with Mark just to make sure that we got along, that we had similar interests. Erin and I already knew that we got along. And then applied to the university. And that process was a little bit easier. GREs were not a problem there. Didn't have to worry about that again. Thank God. Did not have to do
Mhm.
that test again. I'm not well with standardized testing. Like,
That's
have me think through a problem? Sure. Give me bubbles to fill in? Absolutely not.
I, some things just can't be tested. I 100% agree
Right?
with you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I started my PhD in 2018, fall of 2018, and I actually moved out there with my now ex-partner
Mhm.
who was through a lot of this with me as well. So a lot of support coming from that end as well. Um, we both moved to Canada together, and we actually lived out at the university field station the first month that we were living in Canada,
Oh
which was
wow.
such a crash course in living in a new country, because even though it's Canada, it is very similar to the States. It's at the end of the day, it is a different country. And there are some things that are just different between different countries.
I
Had to find all of that out.
I went with my wife up to Banff this past summer, and when we were in Canada, just like it's just a couple of things that were just like, oh yeah, we're not in the United States anymore.
Right? Yeah. Um, yeah, so it was some learning curves on getting permits figured out, getting registration figured out, switching addresses to countries, switching banking to another country. It really was quite a lot up front. Um, now that I've been here for a while, except for my year in the States this past year. Yeah, so it was definitely a lot to get established, to get everything kind of settled. It probably took a solid 6 months to really feel settled down. And it was the summer ahead was when both my partner and I were biologists, and so we both did a summer of seasonal consulting work heading up to this, which means I mean, to put it plainly, it means we actually got paid, like paid well for our
Hmm.
skills. With consulting work, like you're doing a bunch of like bat netting. In this case, we were in northern Missouri, actually, not far from where I am, where I'm from.
Hmm.
Um, Doing presence absence surveys for environmental consulting groups that are hired by energy companies, whether it's natural gas, oil, or wind. In this case, we were working on a wind development project to look for threatened and endangered species.
Oh,
And because we were paid well and we had no rent because they also put us up in a hotel for the entire summer,
oh
we were
wow.
able to we were able to save like everything, every single penny practically.
Oh,
Which then a big perk at the time was moving that good pot of savings into Canadian dollars.
yep.
And we were able to afford a home, which I then later paid off. Actually, I guess that was just about 2 years ago now. So, me and my partner had already broken up at that point, and I was able to pay the house off.
Oh my.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
which is
That is
incredible.
awesome.
So, consulting, there is a reason why a lot of people who are trained in wildlife biology, whether it's like whatever type of wildlife biology, flora, fauna, there's a reason why people go into environmental consulting, and that's because you get paid a pretty livable wage, an
Hmm.
actual livable wage, which is
Mm.
nice.
What
I
are some
can't say the same about academia.
that's don't don't I know that's the next teacher, yep. What again, we talked about this a little bit before. So when you had your how should I say this? When everything went down with your eye, how did that affect obviously your just your day to day and your just go on. Sorry, I don't know how to
Yeah,
end a good question.
yeah.
Go on.
I mean, yeah, like talk about having a pretty big wrench thrown into things. It's incredible how you when you have a sudden onset disability, yeah, like lots of things changed. Not to mention just like getting through it mentally. Um, yeah, like try going a day without half your vision, and then maybe you can understand like what it would take to kind of like just mentally process um getting through day to day. Yes, depth perception is a problem.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mostly I noticed it when pouring things, but I did have a series of across the year, across 2019 and going into 2020, I had a series of I like 3 or 4 different surgeries. So I wish I had a fun story, especially given my career field. I wish I had a fun story that like, oh, I like lost an eye when I was doing some crazy stunt in the woods. But no, sadly no. It
Mm.
was it was mid-May, and I we were just doing some early spring garden cleanup and doing some like early spring gardening, and I was just like digging a little hole, like clearing out some things, and all of a sudden I noticed a bunch of eye like floaters started to occupy my vision. Like everybody has floaters, and so I thought like, oh, that's weird, just a bunch of floaters. So I'm like washing out my eye. I called my partner. I was like, "Hey, could you get some like eye solution? I need to like just clean it out. Something weird's happening." But then it was like a curtain was being drawn over, so I can even probably almost mimic it. Like imagine
Oh
like
my.
that part of your vision's gone, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. And now I got my sorry, got my thing dirty. Yeah, so what it turned out to have happened was I had a retinal tear. My retina just I it was a non-trauma induced retinal tear. Usually you have to get hit in the head for a retinal tear to happen or retinal detachment, which is what happened after. So the tear is what caused all of the floaters to come into the vitreous, which is why I was seeing all of the floaters.
Hmm.
And the retinal detachment, your retina is it's the light sensing portion of your eye. And so as the retina was detaching, that's what was causing the blacking out of the vision.
Oh,
And so I had the first surgery I had was them inserting a gas bubble into the back of my eye, which pushes the retina back into place. But I had to, um, it depends on where your retina is torn. So some people have to keep their head in a down position. I had to keep my head in a side position like this
oh
for
my.
I think it was like 7 or 9 days. It was about a week or more. Yeah, and meanwhile, my partner was pretty much planning the summer field season that was happening because there was a bunch of people going out into the woods to catch bats, and that was supposed to start in June, and this was happening in mid-May.
Gosh.
Yeah, and
Mm.
unfortunately, through the course of a year and the 3 to 4 surgeries, I actually don't remember how many. I now have it's called a sclerobuckle, which is an actual
Hmm.
like buckle around my eye, which keeps my retina in place now. So that's a permanent attachment. I even have like a little info card that I have in my wallet that I need to show for medical. Like, hey, I'm going up in a high pressure system. Here's my medical card. Um,
Oh.
and that all being said, I wasn't allowed to lift things. I wasn't allowed to lift like I think it was over 10 pounds, maybe it was 10 pounds, but I even lifted up like a case of like a 12 pack of soda, and that was too heavy. I could actually I never realized how much pressure goes to your head when you're lifting things. And the pressure I could feel it pushing on the back of my eye.
Oh
So I
wow.
couldn't my field season of going out and catching bats in the woods. It happened. I was there. I was going to be damned if I was not out in the field. I was like, heck no. This is my first year of my PhD. I am going to be out there. My project can't really happen, but we can still catch bats and we can still take measurements and we can still collect some samples that could be helpful down the line. And I'm so glad I did that, by the way. Like, so glad I did that. Because it saved my project later down the road.
Hmm.
Um, I just had to, thankfully, my partner, who was also a bat biologist, um, he was leading the crew, doing all of like the hard work, frankly.
Hmm.
And I was the data collector. I was the scribe for the summer. And but
Oh.
I was there and I was out there and I was at the field station because I'm incredibly stubborn. And that's where I wanted to be, so that's where I was gonna be. Post-op 2 weeks, I think.
Jesus. That. I mean, I can just hear it in your voice, just like I mean that was a difficult time, but I'm sure it's like that you know you grew so much from that. That is incredible. I actually work with one of my athletes. I don't want to give too much information out because it's his story more than mine. He actually just was in an accident this past summer, and he has I don't say condition, but he is going through something right now. And one of the things that we're trying to do with him is we're trying to link him up with different athletes that are in the same condition that he has now,
Hmm.
just to show him the process of like, hey, this is possible for you to still complete these things, even though your lifestyle might be a little bit different now. It's still the goals are still the same. So my
Yeah.
question to you is, with your with this story, how even though your goals are your goals were obviously the same, how did you kind of maneuver that shifting of your lifestyle to just better support your process of still achieving your goals?
Well, man. So
I know it's a big question. I'm sorry.
it is. It's a big question and it's a hard question and it's a lot easier said than done too. One thing I will say again, and I can't stress this enough, is that through all of this, I have had the most amazing support system of friends and family and colleagues who have had my back. And that has made all of the difference for the success I've had in my career. So there is that. Like, that is just a fact. I have had an incredible support system. And so I just hope that other people know that they have people they can lean on as well.
Hmm.
Because I've had to ask for a lot of help. I've had to ask for a lot of help. So that was a big part of it, was learning how to ask for help. I think is a skill, and is a skill not only in admitting to yourself that you can ask for help, and that there are probably people around you, even if you, like, you're telling yourself, oh, they won't have the time, oh, I'm going to be a burden, right? um, there are probably people around you that love you and that want to support you, and that you can ask them for help. And i I have learned that, and I now preach that that is in large part a truth, and a truth that I hope everyone can share.
Hmm.
Uh, Also, however, is I learned how to pivot. I just had to learn how to pivot, because at the end of the day, one thing that I always knew, and whenever people are asking me about advice about, especially going into PhD programs, because you have got to want it. You have got to know that that is what you want for for whatever career path you see yourself going. For me, the hill that I want to die on is, I want to make a positive impact for migratory bat conservation. And for that type of outcome for my life, I feel like a PhD is probably pretty necessary, so that I can have the skills and the network and the aptitude to be able to accomplish conservation work. There's different ways that it can look. Maybe I'll be an academic. Maybe I'll be a science communicator. Maybe I will be support for an NGO. I don't know. It can take many
Hmm.
different forms, but I think a PhD is necessary. If you don't think it's necessary, and if you don't know to your core that it's what you want to do, don't do it, because it's a huge undertaking, especially with field work. It's a huge undertaking physically, because you are actively going out into the woods in very remote locations and doing very physical work. And when you are out of the field, you are doing complex statistical analysis. You are reading, you are writing, you're probably teaching to some extent as well, and going to conferences and presenting. And so it's very mentally taxing as well. And so the best thing that I think I did for myself, especially after going through, frankly, some pretty serious medical trauma, and this is just one thing of the laundry list. I got, on top of the eye stuff, come 2020, I had like OG COVID, which likely resulted in long COVID.
Oh.
Um, and I got a appendectomy that same summer, and then had a major neurological episode early fall. So
Jeez.
it was like bam, bam, bam. Like, you have to ask, like, I was forced to ask myself the question, do I want to keep going in this PhD, or should I just just so you have to want it. Otherwise, it's not worth the toll it can possibly take on you. But to cope with all of that, setting boundaries. Setting boundaries with work and really taking to heart the concept. I know this is such a ring term, work-life balance. But what I think that translates into is setting the boundaries with your work. Even if my personal life and my professional life, they are intermingled. There is
Yep.
practically no boundary.
Hmm.
I'm very passionate about my work and I'm very
Hmm.
passionate about what I do. So setting boundaries is really hard. I would say it's just as hard as setting boundaries with your best friend or setting
Hmm.
boundaries with a parent or sibling. It's difficult, and it's emotional. But my physical health literally went into the toilet. And so I had to learn how to set those boundaries and also how to stick to them. I especially because in once you get this to the PhD level with research and writing and academic work, you can set your own schedule to some extent. There's a lot of freedom in your schedule. And so come 5 6 p.m., I'm done. My computer's closed. That's the
Hmm.
end of my workday, and I'm going to rest now.
Hmm.
That's my boundary. Saturdays and Sundays, those are my days. The weekend is mine. I have done my best. Sometimes my weeks aren't that great. I have bad weeks. I don't get a lot done. That doesn't mean I'm going to work on Saturday and Sunday. My weekend is my own. It is my time
Yep.
to rest.
Mm.
Um, unless I very consciously choose and want to work on something, which has happened. I'm actually having a good time doing this.
Hmm.
Um, or I specifically put something off and I'm like, I will work on that on Saturday just this one time. It barely ever happened, but
Hmm.
I set those boundaries with work because everything to some extent, practically everything I do is some form of work. Meetings. I'm very active with professional societies that I'm involved with. I consider all of that different types of work. And it's no, if it's after 5 p.m., not going to do it. Usually it's 5 or 6 p.m. Unless it's for special occasions. But anyway. Um, and then having my weekends. And I think giving myself that space, giving myself that separation really, really helped. And I encourage every new graduate student that it is okay to set those boundaries. And it is okay to give yourself space to breathe because otherwise, burnout is a very real thing. And then on top of burnout, just from the normal aspect of graduate school life, you can have medical emergencies. You can have family emergencies. And if you don't give yourself to kind of physically and mentally breathe, then it can it can do more harm.
I think I really hope that the students that are watching this just gain an appreciation for understanding that, like what you're saying. And I know, like you mentioned, it's a, like that work-life balance term, but that is truthfully a tough thing that I had to learn when I was, teaching for years. When you said about working on the weekends, that's been in the past, especially the past couple of years since COVID. I just feel like I've done more and more of that. And I'm so glad now that I'm at a point in my life where I can separate those two. So I love that I'm hearing that from you. And I hope any students that are watching this right now, they're hearing that and realizing like, hey, there are times where I need to reach out and just say I need help, because I think that's something that I have struggled with as well in my life.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I feel like when you ask for help, um, it can also I feel like it also makes you feel more connected with your community, whatever community that you're in. Um, yeah, it's helped me feel a lot more connected within my communities here, and pretty much every community that I've ever been in. It's when you are in it with each other, and you know that you've got one another's backs, and that you'll help them and they'll help you. It's and community's everything.
Yes, 100%. I'm gonna. So we're at. Oh my gosh, we're already we're almost at an hour. I looking at our questions.
I'm
If
fine
it,
on time. Like if you're open, like I'm fine on time. We don't have to stop.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna limit this to around an hour. I'm gonna ask one or two more questions just because it can be a
Okay.
lot to go through for an hour. Especially because you're doing all the talking. I'm just here. I could do this all night and just listen to good stories. I'm still gonna ask one or two more questions if that's okay.
Okay.
But if you're okay, what I'm finding out is again I have to like 3 or 4 questions. That's it per thing. If you're okay, I'd love to do this again in like a week or two and ask you more questions about your research. So if you're open to
Sure.
that, we can have a round two of this, which would be awesome. So I actually have one of the questions that it might actually kind of continue our conversation about this. One of the questions I always like to ask scientists is because a lot of times when you talk to a scientist, they're always talking about the research they've done. And they're very passionate, obviously, like what you're talking about with all the research you've done with bats. What is still something that you're interested in? We talked about this a little bit beforehand. I'm hoping to hear because I hopefully talk about my favorite state, Montana. But what is something that you're still interested in, and still the big unknown in your field? What is something that you're still interested in?
Okay, just again for some context, I do study North American migratory bats. So that's the context that I am in, and it's not like there's a million of them, not like with birds. There's three. There's three main ones. That's the eastern red bat, the silver-haired bat, and the hoary bat. And you just mentioned Montana, and that's because I did jokingly kind of say, like, there was that Hank Green video that went viral, and you bet it went viral within the bat research community as well. And all of us were like, yeah, yeah, where do the bats in Montana go? We want to know as well. And all of this kind of attributes to, so like, what would I want to know? What would I want to study? I want to know what the migratory pathways are of bats, because we currently don't really know, and we don't really have the capability of quite answering those questions yet. We're so close, the technology is so close, but it's just not quite there for bats. Bats are notoriously difficult to study. They're so hard to study. We can't study them in the same ways that we study birds.
Why? Now I have like 8 more questions now that I want to ask. Why is it so? Why is it so difficult?
Okay, so a lot of the trackers that are used for birds are GPS trackers, and they're solar powered. Guess what doesn't work for bats? Solar power. Yeah, so there's that. Birds are also much more easy to recapture. So birds are rather site fidelic, which means they will very religiously go back to the same nesting locations, and sometimes even the same nest site specifically, or like the same tree. Like they're very very attached to their locations, and so you're more likely to get those GPS trackers back and get that data off of those trackers. The same cannot be said for bats. Recaptures at their summering ground. So if you're outside of a cave, yes, of course you can get some bats back, but they're not going to have that much information on them because you're at the same exact spot. And those types of species aren't really the hyper migratory ones. They don't go the super long distances. So you can get a good idea of like their general area, but they don't do migrations, and so it's not the information we're looking for. With migratory bats, you are lucky to get a recapture. They are few and far between, and the ability to actually get back the specific bat that you put a tracker on is practically non-existent. I only know one person right now who has this ability, and we're talking like for every 15 trackers that go out on the landscape, he might get one of those trackers back. That data set is building up, and I'm sure that there's going to be some really cool publications coming out from their work, hopefully in the very near future, because the data is actually mind-blowing. mind-blowingly cool, but it's not my research, and so I can't publicly talk about it.
What that's
But it's
something I've had to
really
learn.
cool. But it's really,
That's
really cool.
that is
Um,
something I've had to learn with working in academia is you have to be careful with what you say
yeah,
online.
like I would love to share all of their results, but I just can't do it. It's not, it wouldn't be my place.
Hmm.
Um, okay, yeah, so they're hard to track, they're hard to recapture. And also bats are very small. They're quite small, and so the trackers that we use for them are usually about the size of my pinky nail,
Right.
which means the battery lives aren't very good. So the technology to keep that type of information going isn't quite there either. But it's being worked on. We're almost there. There's a lot of cool research that's coming out of Europe for bat migration. So we just need to start deploying better tech, getting better tech, and hopefully we can start answering those questions soon. But unfortunately, they're not listed as threatened or endangered, even though they should be. But that
Mm.
is also a conversation for another day.
This has absolutely been amazing. So again, I left teaching, and I was so worried that when I left teaching, my pathway would be kind of like, I don't know if this is the right pathway. Hearing you talk and hearing you talk about your pathway in science, it just reaffirms that so glad I'm doing this, and I'm glad I'm giving students again another set of eyes, another set of experiences to academia. So again, I want to thank you so much for round one of this. I'm going to say round one of this because I wanted a round two. But yeah,
We
thank
can
you
do
so
it.
much
I'm on down.
thank you so much for talking. I appreciate everything, you taking your, because this is more than an hour. So I know you said you can go for it. I just know the brain needs time to relax sometimes.